In this short video, I'm going to talk about security through network technologies. Primarily, we're going to talk about two: network address translation and network access control. So network address translation, or NATing, it's kind of hard to talk about a specific device or a design around this, but basically it's where we're separating internal traffic from external traffic. And so internal or internet routers normally drop packets with a private IP address. So a network address translation allows a private IP address to be used on the public internet. So it replaces your private IP address with a public IP address as it leaves your network. And then when that traffic comes back for your device, when it returns, it then reverses that process and then sends the traffic back to your computer. And this is what allows us to use the internet through a firewall. So if we're behind a firewall, the firewall can allow our traffic to leave the network without us having that direct connection to the internet by using NATing. And it masquerades, and we masquerade as a public IP address that's different from our internal address. For those of you that are Drexel students who are on campus at Drexel, you may be familiar with the fact that many of our networks at Drexel actually don't have NATing, right? So when you get an IP address on the network, you have an IP address that's actually a public IP address, which is maybe still firewalled, but it's not using NATing. So NATing obfuscates that IP address, your internal IP address. It's not the same to the outside world, which is advantageous for a variety of reasons. So port address translation is similar to NATing, where we can share one public IP address with many different computers that are each listening on different ports. So that's how port address translation. Some of you may be familiar with the term port forwarding, where maybe you've got a firewall at home where you've got one computer that you want to forward anything on port 80, but you've got a different computer where you forward all the traffic to port, say 21 and 22 or something like that. And you only have one public IP address from your cable company or your Fios provider or what have you. And that's an example of port address translation. So you can have one public IP with many different ports. So that's basically what network address translation is. So some of the advantages: it can mask the IP address of internal devices. It can allow multiple devices to share a smaller number of public IP addresses. So I can have thousands of devices on my network all sharing a very small pool of public IP addresses. So we no longer need all those IP addresses. Looking at Drexel as an example, they have an awful lot of public IP addresses that most colleges don't have. Probably because Drexel's been on the internet for a very long time. You know, they're a very early adopter of those technologies. And back then, people really weren't worried about running out of IP addresses. But now, you know, it's a much bigger concern, running out of IP addresses. So, you know, people are less likely to use those. So network access control, or NAC, basically is technologies that we can use to limit who can access the network. So we can create some kind of criteria or restrictions that, if those restrictions are not met, or the criteria